So welcome everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm a senior software engineer. I currently work in the VR and animation industry as a team leader. So I work at a place called Mindshop, and I'm going to introduce the graphic library called Qt to you. So as we saw during the first session, we're going to first create an environment. So which is an instruction on the chat for everybody. You have the instruction that you can follow here. You can either follow this instruction to follow along, or you can just take a look. I'm going to share my code editor session. But in order to prep for it, you first need to create the repository. Then go into the repository directory. And we're going to create an environment for it. And then we're going to use pip install to install the requirements which are in the repository. Something to note, we are going to use PySide 2. If you are using a Mac Silicon, that the pip install is not going to work. We need to go into Rosetta to make it work. Or you can use Homebrew. Alternatively, you can use PySide 6 and just replace the imports from PySide 2 to PySide 6. So I'm going to give you a bit of time. Can anybody press B if they are ready to move on to the next step, or if they need a bit more time to install the environment? Okay, so I guess everybody's ready to move on to the next step. So I'm going to address a note on the session 1. So that's something which came up on Slack. On the session 1, we were using QPalette to change the color of the button. And as I was working on Linux, the QPalette button was working for me, but I forgot to mention that if you're working on Windows or Mac, that's not going to work due to the native style. So either the Q Windows style or Q Mac style taking over some of the QPalette behavior. So the QPalette button does not can't be set on Windows or Mac. There is a workaround that I'm going to show you right now. So one of the workaround is to basically use the style sheets to set the background color. So that's going to work on Windows, Linux, and Mac as well. That's this line over there. So you can remove the set palette, use that, and make sure to change this part as well. And now if you run it, that's going to run on every what is the mainstream system. Oh yes, sorry. I'm going to need to zoom in a bit for you. Okay, you should be able to see now. So you need to set the style sheet, and then just use CSS to set the background color of your button, like that. So before we move on to the two interface we're going to create, I wanted to sidestep and talk about PySide and PyQt documentation and how to use the documentation to find what you need to take you from being able to do an interface to like really use one of those two libraries. So we're going to first go to PyQt and then dive back into PySide a bit more. Okay, so the PyQt documentation can be found here. So you have multiple ones. So as you can see, you have the PyQt 5, PyQt 4, and PyQt 6 over there. So if you go to PyQt 5, you have a list of components. So you can list all the modules. And you can also search for one. So last time we saw the your main window, for example. So you can search for it. And as you can see, sometimes they don't. They're missing some documentation. But I'll give you an idea of like what's available, basically. And you can navigate through it. Some of them have more or less documentation, but sometimes you have an example of, like you can see here, what's a group box, what's a Q label, a Q text edit, a Q line edit, and a Q time edit as well. So it's pretty, you can still learn a lot from it, basically. And the other one that we're going to look a bit more into is the documentation for PySide. So here's something very useful is because we're going to see PySide 2, it's like how to port your PySide 2 code to PySide 6. So that gives you a list of changes on how to port your code over. So there's a few changes. For example, the Q action is a big one, and the Q shortcut as well. So once you get there, and you can access the documentation of your version as well if you need to. You can go to the PySide API reference. Another good one is the example that gives you a lot of example on various UI you can do as well. So we're going to go to the API doc. And the one which really interests us are the basic modules. So Qt Core, Qt GUI, and Qt Widgets. Now the one we're mostly going to use. There's documentation on other modules, like the one to do with QML. And if you click here, you can see every single module. So the one for Qt Network, OpenGL, another good one, Qt Test as well is a good one to take a look into. So there's a lot of them. So but we're going to go back to the basic one. So if we go to Qt Widgets, for example, you're going to see every single class that are available. So that's every kind of like widget, more or less, that you can use. And you can search for one. And usually the first result will be the one you want. So that the one will start with pattern class here. The other one are more like example on how to use it. Something to note though, in the documentation, you have the Qt style sheet example, which I'm going to share in the chat. if you do any kind of like theme and you use CSS, I personally love this page. That's a very, very good reminder of what can be done. And some of the styling can only be done using CSS. So as you can see here, that the background color that we've done in the past. But yeah, I really encourage you. For example, you can do some like nice button very quickly without having to paint your own button, basically. Which painting on widgets is something we would see in the last session. Yeah, I just wanted to have a side note on like this very useful page. But if you click on your class, you're going to go straight on how to create an instance of that class, that widgets. But if we go back up, on the first pass, you're going to see the inheritance for your widgets. So that's very useful. You can see that Q main window inherit from Q widgets, which inherit from Q object and Q pen device. We're going to look at those three in the later session. You also have a list of every single function that are available. So you can, for example, you have a menu bar. You can save the states. That's something we're also going to see in the session 3, how to save the state of the window. So you can bring it back where it was and things like that, or with some of the same default. You have some of the virtual function. You have these slots, which are usually slightly less useful unless you dive a bit deeper. But something very useful as well beside the function are the signal. So like I mentioned, you connect signals. So that's how you can find what to connect, basically. So if we go back to our push button that we created on the session 1. So we can see that the Q push button inherits Q abstract button actually. So it's not the Q widgets. And you can see that this one doesn't have any signal. So the signal are actually on the Q abstract button. So if you do that, you need to go to the Q abstract button. Sometimes you may want to have a type of theirs. So if we go to the Q abstract button, we see that everything that the Q push button have access to, and we do have our signals. So we can see that we can do an operation when the button is click, press, release, or toggled. And when you toggle one, you also have the status of it. So then right after the signal, you often have the detailed description of that class. So that's very useful. That it's very useful to read it because it gives you a lot of insight on how to use that widget. So which function are the most important most of the time. You often have an example as well, which is very, very useful. And which type of stuff you can do. So you can see here, they tell you that set text and set icon are two very important things for Q abstract button. But we can also set the icon like that. And something that they tell you that we're going to see on the session 3 is how to add a shortcut for your button. So if we do add F7, we can actually trigger the action of the button. And then they talk a bit more about the signal as well, and when they get triggered. And sometimes you also have some tiny bit of information if there's any things you need to be aware of and things like that. Then you have the constructor, so how to create a new instance and which parameter you have. And then for every function, you have the return type, what the function is doing, the parameter, and so on. And often when you have another like class or widget, you can just click on it, and it's going to bring you to it. So, and you can see here on the detailed description of the QRadio button, I actually have a screenshot of the QRadio button. So something you could do is to just go to the Q module, especially the Qt widget. Because Qt widget are the one which actually have widgets, so that's what show up basically. And just click randomly and see what they look like. Like you have the Q.widgets. That's a very, very interesting one where you can actually use that to have talkable window, for example. If we click on another one, let me find Cucumber box. That's a very interesting one as well. That will generate a drop-down menu like that. And I know it can seem maybe like a lot, especially because of all the links, but it's very good to read the description. So yeah, just go around, and I really encourage you to basically take a look at what you have here. There's also another way to discover widgets. Let me see if I can show you up to you. You can use Qt Designer. So that's something you need to install separately from PySide or PyQt. And I mentioned it briefly last week, but you can use that to create interface. I personally don't use it for interface because I prefer to code them, but I sometimes use it for prototyping if I don't use another mockup tool. But you can see, you can take a look at every type of widgets here. And if you go here, you can get the actual name of the class. So that's rather useful for that. And if you want, you can even preview how it's going to look like. For example, so that was a side note on Qt Designer that you can use to either create interface or just discover which type of widgets you can use, basically, or do even mockups, like what I use it for. Okay, so now we're going to look at creating two interfaces. One would be to have a pop-up who asks the user to do a choice. And thank you, Stephanie. And the other one would be how to get user input. So I'm going to give you everybody one minute to basically use a code editor to bring it up if they want to. So it will be in the session 2 directory. So if you go to source, you have session 1, but now we're going to go to session 2 over there. And we're going to start with the Popup UI. Okay, hopefully everybody can read what's on my screen. If you need something to be a bit bigger, just type it in the chat window. So what we're going to do now is this type of interface. So we still have a button, but when we run it, we're going to have a pop-up who asks the user, hey, do you want to save your data? That's something that is often useful. And based on what they do, you can do one action or the other. So as you can see, they ask to save, I have to save. So it saved the data first, then it did run my code. If I choose to ignore, it just run my function. And if I do cancel, is not going to run the do stuff function. Let me just close that one quickly. Okay, so this part is very similar, as you said, than what we saw last week. And I'm going to talk about this QBox layout right after. But first, we're going to concentrate on the Q message box over there. So that the widgets we're going to look right now. So what we've done is we say when you press the run button, you're going to execute the run function. But before we execute our code, we want to make sure that maybe the user save or something like that. So we create a Q message box. We set a text. So let me bring it back up so you can see how it looks like. So the set text will go here. That's kind of like the main action, like the main information you want to give to the user. And then you can set the set informative text to give a bit more information to them. Now, the next step is to actually add our buttons. So there's a set of buttons that you can, if you go to the documentation, maybe we can find it again. It was here. So we have our Q message box, and we have a so yeah, you have like things like save, discard, cancel, and so on. So something you can also set. You can also set a severity level. So is it a question, something critical, a warning, or whatnot? So, but let's go back to our code. So I wanted to set 3 buttons to it, but you can set as many as you want. So for example, if you want them to either save their work or to cancel the operation, you can just set 2 buttons. So if we run again, it should have closed first. If we run again, we only have 2 buttons right now. So you can add as many buttons as you want, just don't add 50, I guess. That's a bit too much. And something that I like to do, I like to set a default button. So if I really want the user to save their work, I'm going to set the default button to save. And something to note, the order here will be the order that you see in your UI. And now what we do, we actually execute the Q message box. That's very important. We want to make this message box what we call models. So we want it to be a model window. So something which is going to pop up above our window that you can't, that you need to basically close or do one of the action before you go to the next step. So that would actually stop the code execution. So it would be the same than if you had a breakpoint, for example. So that's very, very useful. You can also use that with a Q main window or a Q dialog as well. For example, like the other day, I was using the exit method to make sure that people run like some check on their work. So it was within my tool, I was executing another tool, and I wanted to make sure that they did not dismiss or add that other tool. So that other tool was going up, and they had to close it before they were able to move on. Now that will return an answer. Basically, it's like which button was pressed. So we can see, we can then do some action. So if the user press cancel, we can just return from there and then continue. If they do save, we can save their data. Something you can do, then you can, for example, like pop up a Q file dialog. That's something we're going to see in session 4, I believe. then that can ask them, hey, like, what do you want to save your work? And when we're done, we can just do our stuff. And like Stephanie mentioned, yeah, if you have any question, feel free to put them in the Q&A for later. So that's how we create the queue message box. So that's something that is useful if you need somebody to confirm an action. So you can also change that to OK, for example. I think that's OK. It might be yes as well. Yeah. So you can add them to press on OK or cancel. So somebody asked how to run the project. So once you clone the, I'm going to show up the information again. Just quickly before we move on to the next step. You need to follow the install instruction, but you need to basically create an environment, enable it, and do a pip install. Once you have it installed, you can make sure you are within the environment, and you can just execute the Python script. The Python script is going to actually execute itself. So now that we saw how to create a queue message box, we're going to talk a bit more about the queue box layout. So I'm going to deactivate this one. So basically, if you just create one widget, and I think that one will, that should work. So if you just create one widget, it's going to work. So you see your widgets. However, you're going to have more than one. So let's create another queue button. Over there. So if you create more than one, you can see that, well, our run button is gone, but it's not gone, actually, it does exist. It's just the other button took over. So what you want to do is that within your dialog, QDialog or QMain window, you want to create what's called layouts. So QBox layout inherit from Q layouts. You have a few layout type. Maybe I'm going to bring designer again, so I can show you all the various layout tabs that exist. If I remember, oh yeah, they are here. So you have vertical layout, horizontal layout, grid layout, and form layout. The vertical layout and horizontal layout inherit from the QBox layout. So you can choose to either Q vertical layout or like I've done over here to create a QBox layout and to set the direction of it. You're going to basically place your widgets under this layout. So if I'm going to go back to where I was, and if I create another button, so I create a button and I add my button to that widget. So I add that button to that layout. So now if I run, you can see that I have the run button and the work button. And they are set to top to bottom. So not the order. So they are placed in order. So if I do left to right, they're going to show up like that. And you can even embed a layout within a layout. So that's how you can do complex UI. So if I go back to designer, for example, here, you can add a button to your layout, add a second button to it. Then you can add an horizontal layout. Then you can add a button to it, and another button. And then you can add another vertical layout like that. So that's how you can basically do a UI. So if I do a preview of that, that's how it's going to look like. So we have one layout, which is top to bottom. So within that layout, we have those two Q push buttons. Then within it, we have another layout, which is an horizontal layout. Within that layout, we have those two Q push buttons, and we have another vertical layout. And within it, we have Q push button. So that's how you're going to basically create a bit more complex UI. It's by stacking, by adding widgets into layouts and by adding layouts within layouts, like Russian doll, I guess. So that's why I like to, before I do a UI, I like to like draw it so I know like how I'm going to organize my code. And that's for the box layout that we saw here. And the type of layout is the grid layout, which you might find a bit easier to deal with as you start. So the grid layout is like its name, it's a grid. So you define a number of row and column, and then you can place widgets in a specific row and a specific column. So if we go back to the documentation. So if we go to the QGrid layout documentation, you can see that here you can add items basically. So you give the item you want to add and which row and which column as well. So as you can see here, that Q label was added on row 1, column 1, and then they added, I think that's a text field here on that row and so on. So you can do this type of interface like that. And something useful is that you can define the column stretch. So you can have your interface stretching as you expand the UI or not. So if I go back here, for example, you can see that the button kind of adapt a bit. If I wanted, I could add a spacer. So let me grab the spacer code from here. That would be a bit quicker. So if you want, you can add a spacer between your buttons. And you can see like with a spacer, you can make sure that those buttons stick to both ends of the layout as you expand the interface. We're going to talk a bit more about the spacer on session 3, but that's something I wanted to show, like to explain a bit how layout does work. So I really encourage you to kind of explore which layout you have and to maybe like play around with them. But try to think about how your interface will look like, and so how many layouts you need to do and how to organize them. So now we're going to go to the second script we're going to see today. So I'm going to show you what this one is doing. So for that one, on the previous one, we saw how to ask a an action from the user, but no, we need to actually get information from them. So that one is actually a text field that people can type in. We are getting to get the text from it, and we're going to actually print that in a queue label over there. So as you can see, I've done my layout here. Oh, and I forgot to mention something about the layout. So you first need to create one layout. When you create a layout, you need to create a widget to go with it. And you need to set the layout of that widget like that. And in our case, we're going to, because it's a queue main window, we need to set the central widgets, which is going to be the widgets that hold our queue box layout over there. If you do another layout, you want to do something like that. So let's say you want to do left to right. We're going to set our layouts. We have our widget here. And we're going to place this widget under the main layout. So we're going to do that. Then we can place our queueline edit, which is the text field, and our queue label under it. So hopefully that's going to work. As you can see, that's kind of like how we change how the interface look. So instead of having just one layout, we'll show everything top to bottom. We have one layout, which is our main layout. And then we have another layout where we put both the text field and the label side to side. And basically, we just have our layout and we just add widgets to it. That's pretty much how it works. So if we go back here and go back to the queue line edit. So when we connect the press signal to our run function, and when we run, we are going to basically grab the text from the queue line edit that is defined here. So I use self to make sure I can access it in the run function. So we get our text like that. And then we're going to set the text on the result queue label. So that's kind of like how you can create interfaces which are going to create information from users. We can replace the queue line edit by a queue combo box, for example. So we're going to add a few items. So queue combo box that enables the drop-down menu, and you can add lists basically for the items, or if you want, you can also do add item and add a single item like that. And for that one, if we go back to the documentation, for queue combo box, it's actually current text instead of text. So if we go and look how can we get the text on the combo box, that's how we do it, current text. So if we go back and use current text, so now we have a drop-down menu and we can run like that. So that's how you can basically create interface where like you give a choice to your user, ask them to input like their name or things like that. Another one which is useful is the Q checkbox. And you can actually have it check by default. And then you can use the is check to know if it's checked or not. So that's something useful if you want to ask somebody, hey, do you want to do this action? Do you want this parameter or so on? So you can do a drop-down menu with Q combo box to ask them to pick from a defined set. Use checkbox to, like, since it's a Boolean, like, do you want to do it or not? And something you can even do, we'll see later on, is that you can use the state to show or hide some of the layout or widgets as well. So now we're going to look at the menu here. So our interface have a menu like that, where we can actually use that to close. And like I briefly mentioned, we do have a shortcut. So if you do Control Q, it's going to close the interface. So how do we do that? So Q main window have a menu bar that you can access with self menu bar. We add a menu to it, so that would be a Q menu. And we have our file menu like that. Then we're going to basically define an icon, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to have an icon. But if you define an icon, you're going to have a small icon here before the text. We define the text to show to our action. We can have a status tips that's very useful if you go over it and stay a bit. Well, I don't enough on my system. But you can have like a tooltip will show up. And then with the set shortcut, we can set which shortcut to use. So I can change that to Control W, or I can do Control add plus Q, whichever combination you want to. And then we add our action that we created here. So with Q widgets Q action, and that the one we change with PySide 6 to Qt GUI. So we add our action, and then we say when the action is triggered. So when somebody click on it, we're going to call the Q main window close method. So if we want, we can add more action. So you can have an open action, for example. If Control O. Okay, let's go run with that one. Because why not? So now I have close and open. And if I do Control O, it's going to run like a Z1 function. So that's how you can get any kind of input, and also like kind of like organize your UI a bit. That should give you enough basically at this stage by looking at the documentation to like start to do some simple UI, but we can also be useful in that sense of you can trigger code, but ask information from a user. And that's it. I'm going to go back to where we were. So we're here. And we're going to start with the Q&A. So if anybody have any question, either create a question or type in the chat and we can answer it. So I'm going to give you a few minutes for people to think about any kind of question they might have. Are you talking about the, so maybe I have a question about where she could again see this class. So this talk is going to be published to YouTube maybe in a week or so, depending on our volunteer time, if they have time to edit the video, but that's going to be put on YouTube again. And you can also go to GitHub and actually see the code and play around with it once you check it out. And like Stephanie mentioned, you can also go to our Slack channel, Intro to Qt, and ask any question, or if you have any follow-up that you want to know about, we will try to reply as soon as we can as well. Yeah, I can show you the designer tool. We can spend a bit more time. We have a bit of time, so we can talk about the designer. So you will need to install the designer separately from PySide or PyQt. How to install it depends on your system. So let me see if I can bring up the documentation for it. So if you take a look here, that it's also been renamed actually to there was multiple version of Qt Designer done. So you will need to make sure that you download the proper one. So if I go there, just trying to remember where the I think if you go to a Qt download page, yeah, you should be able to get it from there. If you're on Linux, you can just install it with everything get installed. Yeah, so if you use the binary of Qt, going to put it here. Hopefully you can see it here. You can download the binary, and then in that you should be able to install Qt Designer as part of it. But if we go back to Qt Designer, when you open it, it's going to ask you, unless you turn it off, obviously, if you want to ask to do any kind of widget or a new form like that. So you have a set of widgets. Something you can also do, and I didn't mention, is that you don't have to create a Qt dialog or Qt main window with Qt Designer. You can also design a widget, and then you can load that widget up in your UI. So you can do the Qt main window by code, but just load custom-made Qt widgets like that. So you can start with like some, they have some like pre-made like kind of interface, like dialog. You can choose to create an empty widget or an empty Qt main window. And here you can choose decide, which is not very useful in that case. That's mostly for embedded design. And you just create your window like that. So that's your actual like window or widgets here. On this side, you're going to have the other widget that you can create. like that, and you can filter them out. So if you're looking for the checkbox, you can do that. That's very useful. Then on the object inspector here, you can see what's in your interface. So if we add a few things, you can see they show up here. And something very useful, especially if you're going to do any kind of like complex UI, or if you're going to load up your UI, PyQt, you do want to name your object. So that's how you name your button. So if I had a run button, for example, that's how I will name it. And that's a tool button, for example. So you can name it like that. And you can also access the property of any. So sometimes, like for example, for a button, you can edit the text directly, but you have all the properties. And something interesting, as you can see, I selected the QPush button, but I see QObject, QWidgets, QAbstract button, and then QPush button. So it do show you all the properties and where they inherit from. So that's kind of useful if you're not sure of does auto repeat is in QAbstract button or QPush button, it actually do show you. So if you want, you can have it. It's an checkable button and it's check, for example. You can have a delay. You can change the state as well. So you have access to a lot of like property that you can go over. So like for example, the Q palette is inherited, or you can create your own palette just for that button if you want. So you can change that button color. Obviously, that Q palette stuff will only work on Linux, like I mentioned, because I changed the button property. You can change the font as well, so that's very useful. And I mean, you have a lot of things. The tooltip is something interesting. So something I like to do, I like to add a tooltip to my interface. That's very useful for users. So if they go over and wait a bit, they have a tooltip. So like sometimes you can use like that's what this stuff is for. So if you have like a checkbox, for example, and to do whatever for a parameter, you can explain the parameter. So if they go over, they have, okay, that's what this stuff is for. And you can see that it took the properties here. So it's a checkable button, so on and off, like that. So it's not press, sort of. And I have a different color and a different font like that. Then you can go to your QMain window and you can, so you can either change the size like that, and you can see it's interactive here. It's going to change. Oh, it's okay. You can change the site policy, so you can say, you can change it like that, for example. So then if you preview again, you can see that it changed the policy a bit. You can, you can change the cursor, for example. That's a funny one. So it changed my cursor when I'm on the on that widgets. So if we go back again to that one, we can also see that the QPush button do have the arrow, and we can change that. So for example, if we do that and we go over, it changed the cursor basically. So I encourage you to take a look. There's a lot of options, and look at the documentation if you're not sure what this option is doing. And like I say, you can create some layout like that as well. So you can have some margin as well in your layout, for example. So something I did not talk about, but yeah, you can have margins, which are very useful when you place your buttons like that. And something very cool as well is you can export to Python code. Okay, well, you need to have a UIC install, which I did not install, and I believe I don't have this. I don't have that one either. But you can convert your interface to Python code. It's ugly Python code, but it's Python code. So you can choose to either save as a .ui that you're going to load, or export to Python code and then just work with that. And only if there's any. Yeah, for the form, that one is interesting. You can choose to break your layouts, for example. So that's going to remove it, but still keep the what was under it. So if you break your layout like that, it will still keep the button. Well, if I took that and then delete, it would have removed everything under that layout. So that's something a bit useful. Something you can do as well is you can layout in a grid. So you can take your layout and add sub-layers to it. Maybe I should show with a few buttons before I do that. So if I do that, I can then, so you can see there's like multiple layout now. So we have, let me remove that one. So we have a grid layout, and we kind of like organize things a bit. So you can see it changed our grid layout to a cubative box layout. So you can change your layout as well like that. Personally, that's why I don't really use Designer, because that just drives me insane. And I'm faster when I code my layout, but it's very good for beginners to play with, or if you don't really do a lot of Qt and you don't have to remember a lot of things. So, yeah, that's it for sort of intro to Qt Designer. If you go to the oh, so yeah, I forgot to mention. You also have your signal insert here, so you can basically select what to connect. So if you click on price, for example, so you can do that. Oh yeah. So for example, yeah, as you can see, I connected the press Q push button signal to the Q push button 2 signal. So when this one is pressed, that one that get triggered. So this one is hidden. And you also have a resource browser, but we're not going to touch on that. Something with Qt that I did not really mention is that you can have multiple themes. So you don't have to embed your theme within your application. You can create your application and then apply a theme on top of it. You have also something for translation. So if you need to have a tool in different language, you can basically, there's a very useful way to translate your interface to a different language, as long as you do the groundwork for it. So I don't know if anybody have any other question. If you wait 1 or 2 more minutes. Okay, I think we're done for today. There's no more question left. So I want to thank everybody for watching this session until the end. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to me talk, rumble, and so on. Hopefully you learned something today. If you have any more questions, like Stephanie said, just go to the Intro to Qt Slack channel, and we can reply to any question that you have. And the next session will be in 2 weeks, so on February 8th at the same time. However, the next week session are going to be slightly different than the first two. We're going to look into one complete tool and how we go to make it. And with that, we're going to look at various widgets. Like some of them we show, like the cucumber box, but we're also going to look at how to style them, how to create your own widgets, and how to really create a really useful tool. And I believe I already showed it, but I'm going to show it again. So for people who missed the first session, that's the tool we're going to create. So we're going to create a tool, we can filter like a curve based on various algorithms, and have a preview of how it's going to look like. We're also going to have a way to open and save those curves. And as you can see, how to create more interactive UI, so where we can add and show part of the UI, and when we update a slider, how we can update the widgets. So you can find more resources on GitHub. So you can check out the repository again. And if you have any question, you can also send me an email instead of using Slack. So my email is over there. And I think we're done for today. So thank you, everybody.